couple of years ago, in my previous role, I was asked by my chief executive to take his place and go to an event which was all about voluntary sector leadership. And I was really, really excited about that because that's absolutely my passion. But as I walked in the room, I immediately felt like an imposter because everyone else there was either a chief executive, a senior leader, a director, and I was absolutely nowhere near their level. My imposter syndrome got even worse when I realised that the starter task was everyone was asked to go around the table and introduce themselves by telling the story of their leadership journey. And I just didn't feel like I had that story to tell. And as everyone was going around the room and I was listening to all of these chief execs and directors and amazing people, I noticed lots of words beginning with P that appeared in everybody's story. Promotion, progression and position. And it was almost like that CV of leadership that I didn't feel like applied to me. And there was loads of words beginning with P that I think about when I think of leadership that not one single person mentioned: passion, people and purpose. So I sat there feeling this sense of dread as this circle of doom on all the tables got closer and closer to me. So I did what I normally do in that situation where I don't feel like I can do what's been asked of me. So I go in completely opposite direction. And I told a story of failure of when I got fired as a volunteer of my first opportunity into exploring leadership. I was only 16 years old and I joined the local youth division of a national charity, and I was really excited about it, and it was rubbish. There was a handful of kids there, a lot younger than me, didn't really want to be there. So I complained to the leaders about it and basically got met with the response of, well, you lead it then if you think you can do better. So I did. So I was there for about 3 years. I knew nothing about leadership. No one told me what to do. I grew up on a council estate in Salford. I couldn't have even told you what leadership meant or who I looked up to as a leader. But something inside me felt that if I was going to do anything good for these kids, it was about building upon their skills and capabilities and connecting them, helping them to recognise their strengths, and kind of support and enable them to become leaders and take ownership of the work they were doing in that community. And that's what I did for 3 years. And the division grew from about 5 young people who really didn't want to be there to about 50 young people. And we were getting to be quite well known as one of the largest and most forward-thinking youth organisations in the North West. This was 20 years ago. Nowadays, I'd realised we'd probably call that something like asset-based, person-centred, distributed leadership. But back then, I was called into the room by the people who ran the organisation and was basically told that my volunteering role was ending and I wasn't welcome there anymore. And the reason they gave was because I was lazy and I didn't do anything, and I got the young people to do all the work that I should have been doing as the leader. And I learned a couple of things about leadership that day that stuck with me for a really long time. The first one was about telling the story of what you're doing and why, and the impact and what was involved and why I was approaching it that way. The second biggest one was I don't think I took the time to recognise our different views of leadership. They very much saw leadership as being the person in charge, the person with all the answers, the person that told up at the front on the microphone and told everyone what to do. Where my version was leadership was more about distributing that power to the people and enabling them to take their role. But I think my biggest failure that day was spending the next 15, 20 years thinking that leadership was absolutely not for me. Leadership was a handful of people in very, very senior positions of power, and leadership was not something I was good at or something I should ever get involved in again. And I believed that for about 15, 20 years. That was the lens and the frame through which I saw leadership. So why now am I stood here with the job title of Strategic Lead for People and Leadership? What happened during that time? And the thing that happened was in a previous role about 6 years ago, someone quite senior in the NHS approached me. She wanted to do some piece of work around systems leadership. There's conversation about devolution in the auditorium there. Devolution was coming to Greater Manchester at that time, and she felt really strongly that the leadership styles, behaviours and cultures just weren't set up for that challenge that was coming and the integrated collaborative ways of working that were required to really build meaningful relationships between the NHS and communities. And my initial response was, not a chance. It's that word leadership, and I've tried that once before and I'm not very good at it. I'm not getting involved. But the more I looked into it and realised that systems leadership was this distributed network of people at different levels and at different places, collaborating, working together, working to create a shared purpose, where actually the work wasn't about uniting people in positions of power who'd progressed up to the top, but about uniting people who were passionate to work together around a shared purpose. And the first time ever, I thought, here's actually a way of thinking about leadership that I feel like I can show up in authentically, that aligns with my values and my ways of working. And I feel that matters to all of us at the moment, because that was a way of working that meant that everyone had a role to play and everyone had a contribution to make. And as we started that work, there was a staff survey that basically said that 80% of frontline NHS staff didn't feel able to raise new ideas at work around health and care, how health and care could be improved for their populations and their communities. And the reason given was because they felt that was the job of the leaders and their views on the front line wouldn't be listened to. And immediately I thought, if we're going to solve any of the complex challenges faced by communities today, whether it's integrated health and care, activity and movement, inequalities, everything else that's going on, we need that more collaborative style of leadership that's around people and passion and purpose, and not just around position and hierarchy and who's in charge and who's in control. So that's what I want everyone to think about as you go through today. When are those situations when you need to step in as a positional leader with power and authority, and when do you need to step back and create time and space for other people to grow and share and collaborate and join in? And what I will say as well is when I stood up and shared that story at that event, it changed the tone for the rest of the day. Every single person who stood up and told their story after me told a completely different story that was less about their CV and their position and their job role, and more about what leadership meant for them and how they shown up as a leader within their community and their work. So even the least powerful person can create change if you've got the courage to tell a different story. Thank you.